So no, this is not a gimmick. And yes, you can actually own a piece of the top, the best of the best, the creme de la creme real estate in the entire world, which is New York City. So how do you do it? Let me answer that. Skyscraper owners are getting rid of their skyscrapers in a fire sale due to the coronavirus, and things work. And so how do you own a piece of skyscrapers for $100? I'll tell you exactly how. You do it by investing in REITs. Now, what's a REIT? REIT is basically how you pronounce the acronym REIT, REIT, which stands for Real Estate Investment Trust. So what that really means is, before we get too deep into the complexities, it's basically a professionally managed landlord that owns a bunch of buildings and they trade on the stock exchange. So it's basically like if you or me, we're owning a portfolio of real estate. The difference is that they have it listed on the New York Stock Exchange or on the NASDAQ. You have some private REITs also, real estate ownership company, real estate development company, real estate owner, operator, manager, and so forth. Now, the ones that you may have heard of, some you may not, but one is called, an example is SL Green or Empire State Realty Trust, which is the one that owns, you guessed it, the Empire State Building, right? So you can actually own a piece of those. And the way you actually do it is you just simply go on Robinhood. We talk about this one all the time. And yes, I know they're being sued for somebody that lost things over trading and this and that, but it's still operating. So on Robinhood, you can pick up these shares. They're less than $100. So by doing that, you now own a piece of the skyline. Make sense? There's a way that you can do it. Now, there's other ways you can do it for a little more than $100, or you can invest in stuff like Fundrise. There's something called Ground Floor. You can invest in it for $10. I mean, you can even get into our portfolio. The minimum is $250. Excuse me, $250 to $500. So there's other ways you can do it. But if you're going for $100 or less, and you're going in the public markets, REITs are the way to go. And what's cool about REITs? Oh, before we get into that, there's another way you can do it. You can actually invest in mutual funds that specialize in going into the REITs. So you don't have direct ownership. You invest in a company that then buys shares. This is like basically what a mutual fund is. I'll talk about this some other time. But yes, it's a way you can own it for $100. And the cool thing about REITs is they're legally obligated to pay out the vast majority of the income in dividends to its shareholders. Meaning, if they make $100 million in net profits, they have to pay out 90% of that to their shareholders. So that's what makes it cool. So, and it's an easy, hands-off, low barrier to entry way to getting into the real estate market. So if you've sat on the sidelines, if you wanted to get into real estate and just kind of understand it better, this is probably the easiest way to get into owning real estate. Makes sense? So one thing I will say though, real estate, and I've mentioned this before, is essentially by virtue of the dynamics of the business model, it's about as recession-proof as it gets because the value is tied to the net income. However, once you're in the public markets, you're just as exposed to the volatility of fluctuation, just like from this pandemic, and the REITs have been no exception. The good news here is if you look around and you look at some of the good ones where the numbers pretty much have remained stable and they don't seem to become too affected by what's happening. Again, there's uncertainty with large portfolios because there can be some turnover and this and that, but they're so well capitalized they should be able to sustain it. But when that happens, I think, this is just an opinion, again, I suspect there will be some dips where you'll be able to get in on stuff at a good value. Either way, commercial real estate is a fantastic long-term investment. Most of them are $100 or less. The real estate mutual funds are $100 or less. And they're stable investments. And you know what they say about New York City real estate.